Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar focusing on why mobile quality matters. I'm Julia Black, Marketing Operations Manager at Xamarin. Today we'll cover why mobile testing is so important in ensuring a successful mobile strategy. Steve Yee, Xamarin's Product Marketing Director, will take you through our unique testing approach. And plus, he's joined by Ben Perry from Clearleap, who utilized Xamarin Test Cloud to create a flawless user experience for the launch of HBO Nordic. We will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to send through your questions via the chat box as they come up. And we thought we'd start today's webinar with a quick poll, so please feel free to answer these few questions. Our first question is, are you currently testing on mobile? And the answer options are no, developer testing with just a few devices, manual testing within your Q&A team, or yes, using automated testing. I'll give you a few more seconds to answer. Okay, next question. How many mobile apps do you anticipate building within the next 12 months? Select one of the following: 0 up to 5, between 5 and 10, or more than 10. Okay, thank you all for your responses. Just one more question, and it is, what types of mobile apps are you building? And once we get the answers to these questions, I'll hand you over to Steve Yee, who will start today's webinar. Thanks very much. Okay, Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, everyone. This is Steve Yee from Xamarin. Appreciate everyone joining today's webinar, and why don't we just jump right into it. So in our webinar today, we're going to cover a couple different topics. The first one is around keys to an effective mobile strategy. It looked like from some of the poll answers that many of you are already starting on your mobile efforts within your companies. But for those who haven't, or if you're just starting, wanted to share some of the things that we've seen with customers around how they shape their mobile strategy for success, and also making sure that the apps are of high quality as well. We'll also talk about why mobile quality and testing is so important for a mobile strategy, especially for enterprises. And we'll talk about Xamarin Test Cloud's approach to mobile test automation, and then also talk about Clearleap. And so we've been joined by Ben Perry from Clearleap and talk about their experience utilizing Xamarin Test Cloud to launch HBO Nordic. Excuse me. And then we'll wrap up with conclusion, next steps to find more resources, and also open it up to Q&A. So talking about in enterprise mobile strategy, there are really three components that we want to really emphasize as being for creating a successful mobile strategy within your enterprise. You know, the first element of it is really just business value, and so there are a couple different aspects as to why you actually want to do a mobile app or a series of mobile apps for different business reasons. So you know, they could be for creation of efficiencies, information accuracy, and customer proximity. So these could be perhaps scenarios for a mobile field sales force where they're actually collecting information while they're on the fly, meeting customers face to face, and not having to wait on that information when they come back to the office. So making sure that they're getting and entering that information accurately in a real-time basis, and not waiting until, say, they're at the office or online at the end of the day and perhaps forgetting a few key facts. And then the last thing is around customer acquisition and loyalty. So, you know, perhaps you may not have a consumer, you may not be a consumer-focused company, but you may have apps that that you create for consumers for customer loyalty. So some good examples of that could be, say, like the Starbucks app for accruing points and awarding drinks on birthdays, or say Cinemark, where you can actually look at movie information, look up movie times, and earn rewards through their mobile phone application. So from a technology standpoint, there are a couple other things to consider as well. So, one of the things that we get asked quite a bit is around how secure is the mobile application? How do you secure the device, and how do you secure the transport of that information from the device back into the cloud, or all the way back onto an on-premises existing system? Closely related to that is also the integration aspect, where many of these mobile apps being created today are not greenfield applications, where they're not net new business ventures. These are typically extensions of existing business processes, or existing a customer or a business brand, and integrating into, say, existing marketing campaigns or existing IT systems as well. And then from a device perspective, there's really two considerations to make. There's the BYOD, or bring your own device model of mobile device standardization, or lack of standardization, I should say. So basically, accept any device that's trying to connect to your mobile content, or perhaps going with a standardized approach. So a good example of that is, say, United Airlines, where they standardized on iPhone 6s or 6 Pluses in December of 2014 to all 23,000 of their flight attendants. So in either one of those cases, and there's different approaches, you still need mobile quality and mobile testing, one from a device variety standpoint, and secondly, if you're even just standardizing on iPhone 6, perhaps you need to test and verify that your apps work on multiple versions of the iOS operating system, and perhaps beta releases or upcoming releases to plan for the future. And then the third leg of an enterprise mobile strategy is really all about people and talent. So the people and your IT staff and your technology staff actually delivering these mobile apps, they need to adapt to this changing world around agile delivery and delivery velocity. So customer expectations and user expectations around fast updates and high quality apps. And then also just understanding how mobile development is different from the traditional world of web development, or even desktop apps and traditional IT. And then also just understanding the differences in different mobile platforms, and making sure that the apps work on a cross-platform nature, especially if you're going with a BYOD approach. So when we talk to our customers and they come to us on trying to understand on how to build high-quality applications, and also what we're just seeing in the industry, there are a couple of things that are very, very different about mobile development. And that first one is the fast release cycles. So many of you, or I think all of us, have smartphones right now. And with our popular consumer-facing apps, say like Facebook and Twitter, we often see that there are updates coming from those companies, perhaps on a monthly basis. And I think those expectations are also translating towards enterprise mobility as well, to making sure that we're being agile and supporting the business in adapting to changing business processes, and making sure that the app is high quality. And so if there are user issues or features that are missing, those get updated and those get implemented within a short period of time. And so associated with quality is also the short attention span and the short user sessions of a mobile app. So many of these mobile applications are often used for less than a minute, perhaps just within 30 seconds to browse information or quickly enter information. And oftentimes this is just taking a quick glance, so making sure that the application launches within a matter of less than 2 or 3 seconds, and that information is transferred and visible to the user very, very quickly. And we also, all of these lead up to high mobile user expectations. And so from a usage standpoint, whether you're in an enterprise or trying to extend your brand through consumer applications, having a high app rating and having a high quality app directly reflects on either your company, your brand, or your technology staff within the company. And so contributing to that challenge is just the notion of, or the trend that we've seen around fragmentation of devices in the market. So on the market data that we've seen with Xamarin Test Cloud, to test on just in the US, to get 75% market coverage of devices in the US, you actually need 134 devices. And that gets even worse when you look at the plethora of Android devices in the market. So this graphic was actually an industry graphic about the different Android devices that were released in 2014. So there were actually 19,000 unique Android devices produced by all the manufacturers globally. So some of them here you recognize, like Galaxy devices from Samsung and Motorola and Nokia, but then there are up-and-comers internationally such as Huawei, as well as Cyanogen platforms. So not only do we have devices, but we also have a variety of operating systems that's not even represented in this graphic. And so that what makes one of the things that makes mobile quality so incredibly difficult. So this is obviously an Android picture, but the iOS picture in the Apple ecosystem is less complicated, but it's still challenging because you have a variety of form factors such as the iPhone 6, now you have the iPhone 6 Plus, and you have different sizes of iPads, so you have a different form factor altogether. And then you also have the millions of, quote-unquote legacy devices that include the iPhone 5 series and iPhone 4s as well, that users will continue to use for the next several years. And so how do we actually make these apps work correctly and create a great user experience across all these devices is actually very, very challenging. So, these first impressions truly count. 60% of the users are going to abandon your app if it doesn't load within 3 seconds, and nearly half said they would never return to the app. So you have literally about 3 seconds to make a great impression and a lasting impression with your app and create a loyal user. So this is probably skewed more towards consumer, but from an enterprise scenario and for employee productivity apps, if your employees aren't using the app, you're negating the need to actually introduce those efficiencies that you're attempting to do, and they'll find workarounds or perhaps abandon the business processes that you're hoping to implement through a mobility effort. And so during your development effort, there's a term that we like to call shift left, and that's the notion of testing earlier and automating your testing while you're doing your development. So I think the perpetual challenge with software development pre-mobile, whether you're doing web development or desktop, traditional desktop, was you're looking at that gray graph or that gray curve, which is the typical quality model where you start with a longer development cycle, and then you do more of your testing towards the release to actual users. Now, you're going to actually find perhaps some bugs that have been long residing in your code for a long time, or you might actually find flaws in your architecture late in the game versus earlier when you could have adjusted. So what we are encouraging our customers to do, and what we're seeing in the industry, is this notion of the shift left model, which is that the green curve on the left, where testers are doing more testing, developers are writing their own tests, and automating those tests early in the development cycle. And so why is that so important, and how do you actually quantify the benefits? So there are 4 key things that we found that by testing early and shifting left, we've been able to prevent lost time, fewer frustrated users, increased customer loyalty, and fewer lost customers. So why does that happen? So a lot of these errors could have been spent on avoidable rework by finding those bugs early. So as I mentioned, say perhaps there could have been a critical flaw or some critical assumptions in the architecture that could be fixed earlier in the development effort versus later, and you have to do some expensive workarounds. And so many of these defects, if you test later in the cycle, come from only 20% of the code because you have to fix the architecture, again, do expensive workarounds, or it's really too late to change some of the processes that you've implemented in that app. So really the cost of finding those defects after deployment or towards the end of a release cycle is about 85% higher than finding those defects earlier in the development process. And so that's why we encourage our users and our customers, and what we're seeing in the industry as an overall trend is that to increase that agility and to find those bugs earlier is to test early and to test often as part of the development process. And so as we did our own comparisons with apps that we built internally at Xamarin, and also we've quantified this and verified this with our customers, we found that doing this automated testing has not only increased the productivity, reduced the bugs, but then automated testing has huge benefits over other alternative testing approaches, namely manual testing. So if you look at the comparison, the top bar has the time and all the steps necessary for a successful manual testing effort, and the hours necessary to actually complete that and find value in that first iteration, versus automated testing, which is the light blue chart on the bottom of the page. So if you're going with a manual testing effort, you need to hire and source manual testers, and so actually staffing up that team can be expensive and time consuming. You also need to train those testers, and you also need to train them on a continual basis. They could be either have high turnover on that staff, where you need to continually train new testers and bring them on board so that they understand what the app does and what its business function is. But as you add new features, you also need to retrain your testers to test those new features, and so they understand how the app has changed. To supply all those testers with devices, you need to produce and also activate all those devices, load all the apps on the device, then go through the manual testing cycle, getting the results back and aggregating the results, analyzing that, resetting the device, and then going through that cycle all over again, which is a very, very intensive, a very long process, and that time to value and that time to actually produce relevant bug reports that developers can respond to can often be several days or perhaps even weeks. Now, what you can do with automated testing is that the steps are much more compressed and the time is compressed as well, where you don't necessarily need to train the testers. You write your test scripts once, and then you can test it on literally hundreds of different devices in a managed device environment. So one of the things that I failed to mention with manual testing, again, is you have to produce and activate all those devices, but how realistically can you maintain and stay up to date with a device catalog of, say, a couple hundred devices that would get you perhaps 80 to 85% market coverage just in the US. And if you're building an international application, those challenges get even worse. And so with a managed testing environment, you have the benefit of staying up to date with the latest devices and not having to reset them, procure new devices, and then load the apps and do all those things that are time consuming and also expensive. And so there are a couple different approaches you can take for mobile testing, and here are the ones that, on a broad stroke, to give you an overview of the relative benefits of each. So we talked about manual, which many companies are doing right now, but you notice that we look at the benefits and as we go down that vertical column on that left, they're on test accuracy, real usage scenarios, the breadth and size of the device catalog, test time, and the cost overhead. Manual testing is really at the bottom, or probably the last consideration we would recommend for doing a comprehensive mobile quality effort. There are two other solutions or approaches in the market that you can consider, but they also have their drawbacks as well. So the second one is remoting, and so there are some solutions in the market that offer a remoting solution. Now, what they're really offering you is just kind of a virtual device rental. So it's almost, it really only gives you the benefit of accessing some other devices you may not have on hand physically, but the test accuracy is limited because you're just remotely accessing the device with, say, a mouse versus real human interaction and interactions like swipes and touches and multi-touch types of gestures. But then, that device catalog could be fairly low. And again, you're doing essentially manual testing on a virtual device, so that testing time is still high. Now, you have a third approach, which is simulator-based. And so that is getting you closer to an automated-based approach. And there are other industry solutions that provide automation frameworks, but only do that testing on simulators. So now your test accuracy is very low at this point because you're not actually using a real device. You're using an emulated device. And many of these devices, like say by manufacturers, have OEM customizations for, like say, a custom networking stack, additional software that they've loaded to create a branded experience for their device, and you don't get any of that with a simulator-based approach. And so, these are very low real-world usage scenarios, but you do save time on cost and testing time. But where we feel that the most benefit and the most tangible benefits from a mobile quality effort is really going towards an automated approach so you have the highest in test accuracy, the most real-world usage scenarios that can be recreated in an automated testing environment, the best device catalog, and the lowest testing time and the lowest cost and overhead. And so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about our approach from Xamarin. So our product for mobile quality and mobile testing is Xamarin Test Cloud, and we feel that this is the best in increasing quality and agility and the time to market for mobile efforts. And so in a mobile development effort, we feel that the development is very different. There are some aspects that are the same, but what we like to call the mobile development lifecycle, which is different than, say, web development or traditional desktop development, where you still have the same phases around designing, developing, integrating, and the same types of methodology around agility. But what's different is the importance on testing, because you have, say, differences in browsers, yes, but you look at the device fragmentation chart that we showed you earlier on the differences in Android devices and operating system versions, just on Android, but then that's also existing on iOS devices and then also on Windows Phone. You know, that matrix goes into the tens of thousands of different iterations. So testing for quality is so incredibly important before you actually get in the hands of your users. And then once it's in the hands of your users, it's important to monitor usage behavior, to get crash reports, and understand how users are interacting with the app, and take that as input for improving on the next iteration in your Agile methodology, so you can pump out updates and releases, perhaps even on a monthly or even, say, perhaps a bi-weekly basis. And so the notion of the mobile development lifecycle is kind of new and different, new and the same at the same time, but with a really emphasis on testing and quality, and then also understanding how users are using the app and collecting crash reports once it's out and deployed. And so the thing about Xamarin Test Cloud is this is a managed testing environment where we have nearly 1,500 devices running in our managed device cloud between Android and iOS. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have a variety of different operating systems and form factors. So we have multiples of the same device, but running different versions of the operating system, because there are slight differences in the behavior between, even just point releases of, say, iOS and Android. And I'll actually show you an example of that within a couple of minutes. And so what I'm going to show you right now is an example of how we used Xamarin Test Cloud to actually test one of our own apps. And so this is a demonstration application that we wrote on the Xamarin platform of a sample CRM-based application written in Xamarin Forms. And as you can see, it's running on an iOS device on the left, Android in the middle, and a Windows Phone on the right. And so this was using our Xamarin platform and Xamarin Forms cross-platform framework. And as we test it within Xamarin Test Cloud, within our Test Cloud portal, we have different versions of the app for different platforms, and it's important to note that Xamarin Test Cloud can test any mobile application. It's not just Xamarin apps. We can test Objective-C and Swift applications, Java, Android applications, and also hybrid HTML if you're writing PhoneGap or Kony applications as well. So Xamarin Test Cloud will test any application. And as you select in one application, you also get a history of your test results for that app. So you get a tracking history of the number of tests executed, peak memory usage, and also the app download size. So the app download size is actually pretty interesting and pretty important, especially if your users may not have Wi-Fi access. They perhaps might be on 4G, 3G, or purchasing an app off of an app store. That's an important consideration to make sure that the app isn't getting bloated over time, and making sure that those download sizes take only a matter of minutes rather than a couple of hours. And we get some of these summary reports, so we're able to quickly isolate issues related to, say, a particular operating system version or a particular manufacturer. And as you can see here, it looks like immediately we're seeing some errors with an Android versions of 4.0, if you're looking at the bottom left. And also, we're perhaps having some issues with Amazon devices if you're looking at the manufacturer table on the right. And we can also see failures by a particular device type, and so we can isolate issues based on a device model. So as you can see, we get some more granular data on Amazon Kindle, specifically the Kindle Fire 2nd Gen. It looks like our app is not interacting well with that specific device. And so here's the magic of Xamarin Test Cloud. This is what you see when you're actually evaluating results. You notice you have dozens of screenshots of different devices that we've tested the application on, and this is all done automated in an automated fashion. So we can review each step of a particular test case and compare the visual results. So if you look at the left, you see these are all the different steps of a particular test case. And we do our visual comparison very, very quickly across hundreds of devices and the different devices that we select. And we can zoom in on a particular device and get a high resolution screenshot. And we also support video playback. So we look at how does the say the animations or the transitions in the app look? Are they jagged? Are they kind of janky? Or are they very, very smooth and look very professional? And as you tap on the different steps in the test, all of these screenshots update dynamically with you. So you can do visual comparisons across all these devices very, very, very quickly. But what I want to show you also is that how does Xamarin Test Cloud help you find bugs? So there are two types of bugs. There are, say, visual bugs or visual inconsistencies, and then there are actual, say, crashes or exceptions that occur. I want to take you through what a visual inconsistency or what a visual bug is. And so I've highlighted two devices here in this test run on an Android device, and we have the Samsung Pocket Neo, which is on the top, and a Sony Xperia tablet on the bottom. So there are two key differences between these devices. That Samsung Galaxy Pocket Neo is in portrait mode, and as you can see, that menu is very, very large, and it's because this device is actually very, very small, hence the name Pocket Neo, versus, say, a 3 or 4 inch screen on a Motorola Moto X or something like that. But then the Sony Xperia tablet on the bottom is actually a tablet, so it's a completely different form factor. And we're also able to test in landscape mode, so we can test in both modes. And so you can utilize the same script for testing in those two different modes. Whereas if you're doing this in a manual testing environment, or if you're doing a remoting-based approach, you would actually have to do 2 complete test runs and make sure that there weren't any visual consistencies in either one of those display modes. So I've compiled a couple different results from our tests across iOS and Android. So the top row is some of the Android results, and we showed the Samsung Pocket Neo on the left, and then we have a different Samsung smartphone and our Sony tablet. So from a visual perspective, we feel that the ones on the right and in the center really pass our test. And then from an engineering standpoint, that Samsung Pocket Neo doesn't necessarily fail, but we have to perhaps now make a decision. Do we want to support devices that small and in that form factor, or do we just clearly state and say, hey, we're only going to support smartphones and tablets that are 4 inches in screen size and larger? What's also interesting is that our results on the bottom are our iOS devices when we did an iOS test run. So what we have on the bottom left is an iPhone, and it looks like that test has passed. The screen looks as we've anticipated, but we have 2 visual errors on the 2 iPads on the bottom right, and this is actually really interesting because these iPads are actually identical models, but they're running different versions of the iOS operating system. One of them is running iOS 8.1, the other one's running iOS 8.0. Now, both of them, in my opinion, fail because there's some visual space along the bottom half, one with a tiling error and the other one with just, say, a gradient blue. That's unappealing to look at. But notice that it's the same app, it's the same compiled binary, but it's being displayed slightly differently, and that's because the one in the center is running an older version of iOS versus the one on the right. And so just that small difference in iOS version is actually creating different visual effects for the application and the same binary that we've tested against. And so other features of Xamarin Test Cloud is that we can access precise device specs and get full-size screenshots, and also get the native device log, so we can understand when a crash has happened, what the root cause analysis is, and also understand as we step through each step of that test, we understand the CPU and memory usage. So it looks like obviously something has gone very, very wrong with this test on this Samsung device, because we look at our peak memory usage, it's quickly skyrocketing and getting to nearly a gigabyte in usage, and our CPU usage is through the charts as well. And so what I'm taking you through now is that in app running on our Samsung device that has crashed. And so there's not necessarily a visual inconsistency. What has happened is that the app has crashed and just gone back to the home screen. And so when we look at our test results for this specific device, we look at our test failure, and this is some of the diagnostic information that we've gotten back. But then when we download the entire device log information from Xamarin Test Cloud, here's the specific error information that we found. So we definitely got a memory exception, and so we need to review our code and look at what's happened and why has it crashed for the Samsung device. So this is quickly helping us do root cause analysis on a functional bug for our app. So one of the great things about Xamarin Test Cloud is that it works with continuous integration environments. So popular ones like Jenkins, Microsoft's Team Foundation System, TeamCity, and then also now Visual Studio Online can be integrated with Xamarin Test Cloud to shorten the feedback cycle, and we prevent users from finding these regression errors. And so supporting that shift left model is that once these tests are created just once, they can be kicked off, say, with each build or with each code change, and the continuous integration system can actually kick off these tests and import those results back into your CI system. So you can do this as either part of your daily build, say a smoke test with a couple devices on say a weekly basis, or as you're ending a sprint of some sort, you can do it with a larger suite of devices and test against a larger catalog. So to author these tests, we offer a different assortment of languages to make sure that this fits in with your development methodology and the platforms that you're using. So we support Ruby, and on C# we both support C# unit test development, both within Xamarin Studio and also Visual Studio. Apologize for the why it says Android Studio. I'm not sure why it says that. And we'll also be supporting Java in the very near future. And so the framework that we're using is called Calabash. And so this is one of the leading mobile testing frameworks in the industry that many other solutions for automated testing actually support. And the authors of this, Carl and Jonas, who are based in Denmark, actually joined Xamarin about a year ago to introduce Test Cloud, and they continue to be the stewards of the Calabash framework. So as you may be aware, this framework started off in Ruby and supporting Cucumber and behavior-driven development types of test development, but now we've expanded it to include C#, and it's also very, very tightly integrated with our Xamarin Test Cloud environment. So you may see other solutions that support, say, hey, we support a dozen or 10 different testing frameworks. Having support for running those environments and also support and having tight integration to actually understanding test results and providing meaningful results are actually two separate things. So the benefit of Calabash and Xamarin Test Cloud working so closely together is that you get very, very high fidelity results back both visually and then also from understanding functional bugs and crashes as well. So one of the important things about Test Cloud and the Calabash framework, and also just for mobile testing in general, is that there's the support for this new generation of types of input. So it's no longer just keyboard and mouse input, but also human interaction such as taps, scrolls, swipes, pinching, or rotating the device from portrait to landscape. And then also sensor-based input such as GPS. And those are all things that you should look for in a mobile testing framework and a mobile testing environment to making sure that you're taking advantage of all the features of your mobile efforts. So I wanted to show you just a quick example of how tests are generated in C# utilizing the Calabash framework and uploaded into Xamarin Test Cloud. So what I'm showing you here is a screenshot of Xamarin Studio, but you can easily use Microsoft's Visual Studio as well. And this is an example of a test to verify our product inventory written in C#. And so you notice that this is using the familiar C# framework. You can do advanced querying and Lambda functions and link queries. But I also wanted to show you an example of the types of human interaction that you can program into UI tests with C# and the Calabash framework. So what I've highlighted in red is is what I want to mimic a human interaction for doing a tap, and then 2 lines down you notice that we have a command for actually doing swipes as well, and then here let's actually capture a screenshot so we can show the visual results of that test. So you notice that these tests are very clean, they're easy to maintain, And they're also object-based, so perhaps you might have moved a text element from the top of the screen or to the bottom of the screen. These tests still stay relevant, and you don't have to rewrite those tests. So how do you actually upload these tests once you're actually ready to run do a test run and you've written your tests? What you do is you can upload these tests. You upload the application binary and also the tests up into the Test Cloud portal, and then you select the different devices that you want to test against. So you can filter by form factor, and we also carry and maintain the latest market share data, so you can select the top devices in a particular geography. And this is hugely important, especially if you're on a test for, say, US smartphones or, say, tablets in Asia. This is something that Xamarin Test Cloud offers as well. But the criteria is pretty comprehensive, just because we have nearly 1,500 devices. So you can filter and select by manufacturer, OS version, a particular processor, and then also the cores and memory of the device that you want to test against. Excuse me. And so we have many large customers who have found success with Xamarin Test Cloud in the past year that we've released it. So some examples, including Clearleap, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, include Dropbox, Foursquare, Trello, Expensify, Flipboard, and then also eBay as well. And what we offer, and to make sure that customers are super successful with our products and services, is that we also offer managed services. So for Xamarin Test Cloud, we have a crack team of automators led by Dan Waters, who's also on the call, where you give us your app and also the test use cases, and we will actually author the test for you and write those initial tests for you, so you can get up to speed very, very quickly and testing within a matter of days, utilizing our Xamarin Test Cloud to execute the test results. And then we provide the reports and all the analytics that you saw in that Test Cloud portal earlier. And we'll also help with the integration into your CI system if that's something that you're using as well. So let me hand it over to Ben with Clearleap, and he's going to talk about their experience selecting a mobile automated test provider and why they selected Xamarin Test Cloud and the benefits it brought them in launching HBO in the Nordic region. So let me go ahead and give control to Ben, and I'll let him take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, this is Ben Perry from Clearleap. I think I got control. There we go. So as Steve mentioned, I'm going to quickly go over why we chose Xamarin Test Cloud and how we came to that decision for testing with HBO Nordic. All right, so HBO Nordic came to us a year or two ago, and they wanted to relaunch their mobile applications. HBO first entered the Nordic region 5 years ago, and it was the first direct-to-consumer offering available, similar to what we have in the States, HBO Now. And so when they first released several years ago, they had varying app reviews, typically not great. So when they wanted to rebrand and bring their apps to the next level and really enhance user experience, high-quality mobile apps were just paramount to them. In addition to just making really stellar apps, they wanted to have multiple language support, multiple currency. It was a geo-aware catalog, additionally management and billing, stuff like that. We're generally a back-end company, and so we typically handle the video delivery. And so the app world is a little new to us, and so we engaged an external app vendor to help us get going with this. While we were testing with HBO Nordic, we would get several builds a day, or several builds a week, excuse me. Typically we'd get iOS 2 days a week, and we'd get Android another 2 days a week. And so our manual QA effort was really just taking a long amount of time. With the device or in the market fracturing that we see, it was really difficult to stay on schedule. With got a test on 10 of these devices, 20 of those devices, and then a different version on this device. And so with limited QA resources and just release schedules in other parts of our platform, it was difficult to stay ahead. So we began investigating what options there were for automated mobile testing, and ideally a mobile cloud too, because we had maintained a bunch of devices, and we were not getting as much benefit from that as we wanted. So we wanted an option that we didn't have to own devices in the future. So we started looking around, and there were a bunch of different options, and I'm sure if you've looked, you've seen lots of options as well. Some of the things that contributed to our decision was internally we had moved Cucumber back in early 2014 so that our QA folks can write behavior-driven tests, like Steve said, and we really didn't like the idea of the record and play style of automated testing. As mentioned, Calabash uses Cucumber, and then Xamarin, with a very close partnership, and in fact, direct partnership with Calabash, Xamarin Test Cloud allowed us to use that technology and still get our automated tests done in a easy to read fashion. The real awesome part for us is that the test cloud was located in Europe, and so our geo-aware apps were very easy to test over there. We didn't have to do any strange VPN connections to get back. And all of this shortened our regression cycle. We went from multiple builds per day or week and struggling to keep afloat to having some breathing room and being able to get these builds out to HBO Nordic on time so that they could run through their own QA. And in fact, we engaged the managed services option of Xamarin, which allowed us to really jumpstart our automated testing while still performing manual testing internally. So we had someone, an expert at Xamarin, help us get dozens, almost 100 test cases automated for us in the 3 to 4 months that we were working with them, so that by the time that we took over, we already had a large amount of it done, and we just had to continue adding our regression tests. And day to day, we use Xamarin Test Cloud so that when we change our back-end infrastructure or software, we can run a quick post-change certification test to make sure that the apps still work, so that we can be more agile in our production software without breaking any of the application or any of the applications. The result was actually very stellar for us, and we saw really good results almost immediately when we launched. We got industry praise as well as really, really good social media praise, and these are one of the things that help drive increased volume for signups. It really changed the image of the HBO Nordic app from where it was a few years ago. So we were absolutely able to see the benefits of what automated mobile testing did, and how immediate the impact with customers can be once you release it. That's primarily how our interaction with Xamarin went, and that brings us to that one. Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Ben.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problems. So we've reached kind of like the end of our presentation here. For more information, you should visit xamarin.com/testcloud. If you're interested in learning more and wanting to talk with someone at Xamarin, you can send an email to Ryan McKinley. So it's ryan.mckinley@xamarin.com. And we also have a couple minutes here for Q&A. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, either for myself, Ben, or from our automation expert, Dan Waters from Xamarin as well. So I think Julia might be queuing up some of the questions that might have appeared. Julia, or do we have any questions that people want to ask?
Hi there. Sorry about that. Yes. So one question was, how do we access the video playback?
Okay, so that's probably a question best answered by Dan. It is a new feature that we released just a couple of weeks ago prior to build, so that was I guess about 3 weeks ago. Dan, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Hey, everybody. This is Dan Waters. I'm a senior sales engineer at Xamarin for Xamarin Test Cloud. Um, with regard to video playback, so this is still kind of a preview feature for us, and it's something that we are able to feature flag for individual customers. So if you're an existing Xamarin customer and you want to try out the video playback, just get in touch with your Xamarin account manager, and we can get that turned on for you.
Great, thank you. We also have, how often does Xamarin add new devices to its device catalog?
I can take that one also. So we have been adding devices at a rate of about 100 devices per month for the last several months, at least through 2015. One of our major goals for this current year is to have the best, biggest, meanest device cloud out there. And as you can see, we're well on track to achieving that. When it comes to adding devices that have new operating systems, for example, a new beta of iOS, for example, let's take iOS 8.3. We had same-day support for that, so we had devices that you could go and test on immediately, the same day that the operating system was live to users. So that gives you a lot of time and flexibility because you can just wake up in the morning and test on the new version of iOS. Like rather than having to go, install it on devices and all of that stuff, which is extremely painful. Anytime that we see a new device come onto the market, particularly from Samsung or any of the other major manufacturers that we feel is going to be a popular device, we acquire those as fast as humanly possible. And there's even some devices in our device lab that are very specialized, that are customer requests. So for example, ruggedized devices that you can only find in Japan. We've got quite a large number of these devices, and the aim again is to provide the closest match to what actually exists in your customer ecosystem, so that you can achieve the highest test realism possible.
Thanks, Dan. And one thing I also wanted to add is that we also have multiples of the same device with the same configuration, just to make sure that you get the test results as fast as possible. So one of the things that we also offer in Xamarin Test Cloud is the notion of test parallelization. I have to be careful about that pronunciation, where you can actually split up the tests across multiple devices with the same configuration. So your the entirety of your test suite runs a lot faster than running sequentially.
Thanks, Steve. Our next question from Shannon is there a way to test the BLE stack on a device?
I'm not sure. Did you say the BOE stack?
BLE.
Oh, like the Bluetooth stack. So here's the thing about Bluetooth, right? We don't offer Bluetooth devices in the test cloud just because it is highly impractical, as you can probably imagine. With all of that RF frequency and just pairing to devices, it's quite difficult. So what we suggest instead, and this will actually get you a long way, is if you build out a software mock of that Bluetooth dependency, and this is what other industry leaders that we've spoken to, by the way, that have external hardware do, is they'll test the hardware integration separately, right? But in terms of functional testing, all you care about is the fact that this little device is returning data that you expect, or is returning data under some conditions. So if you build a software mock, you can actually use things like backdoor methods to control that software mock from the test. So you can say the Bluetooth device is on, it's not on, it's returning this data instead of that data. And then your app will be listening to that mock instead of the actual integration. So you still get full fidelity functional testing based on all the different states that your device could be in and all the different data that it could send back. And you'll still see the application functioning in response to that data that's received. So really, I guess long story short, building a software mock, having a test build of your app, not trying to test your production build. These are just a couple of principles that are going to give you great flexibility and allow you to test a lot of different complex scenarios.
Awesome, thanks, Dan. And our next question is from Marco. He's asked, can Xamarin Test Cloud also be used to test mobile web pages instead of uploading an app?
Yeah, that's certainly possible. So Test Cloud isn't designed from the ground up to be a mobile web testing product, but what we do instead is if you're comfortable relying on a web view's display capabilities, or even on Android, we can do a crosswalk web view which is much more technically capable of doing more complicated JavaScript and CSS displays and whatnot. If you're comfortable with doing a web view, it's possible to build a simple container, and I've actually done an example of this, so if anyone's interested, just reach out to me. But I've basically built a web container that, again, you can control the URL that this web container displays from the test. So you can have the test navigate around, to all kinds of different pages. And then we support both CSS selectors and XPath as a way of referencing elements in the DOM. So if you're familiar with Selenium, it's a very, very similar kind of approach. And you can always build out strongly typed page objects to represent those operations for each page in your application. So it's definitely possible. We've made quite a lot of progress with good best practices in place for testing mobile web applications in this way. And if you're looking for really just a full stack solution from native to mobile web, that's something that we can definitely provide.
Great, thanks for that. And from John, how do I know Xamarin Test Cloud is secure with my data and apps?
Dan, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, when we first started on this journey, there were a lot of different mobile testing solutions on the market that we were looking at, and several of them would, display past test runs on the device, like past applications, and it was just, to us, it was kind of mind-blowing. Like, that seems like a major violation of customer privacy. So we set out from day one to ensure that all customer data is secure. And one of the big things that we do is we ensure that the device is always in a completely fresh and known state before giving it to your test execution host to actually run the test. So on iOS, we actually re-image the device after every single test run with a brand new iTunes backup image, which is a specialized image that we use in our lab. It's got no customer data on it or anything like that. It's just a fresh image that's got everything on it that's required for UI automation. And then on Android, we have a really kind of a detailed, specific cleanup routine. If you've ever tried to reimage an Android device, it's something that takes a little bit too long, and if we did the reimaging, it results in longer wait times for our customers. So instead of doing that, we do a very specialized cleanup routine that involves removing the app, removing all of the app's data, closing down all the browser tabs, clearing out the cache. There's a very specific list of things that we do. And this is all done in an automated way. And we have a detection algorithm which can find out if any of those steps failed. The device immediately goes into quarantine and then alerts our lab staff to go and work on that device. So there's multiple layers of protection in place to ensure that the device is always ready for you to work with, and ensures that your data is never going anywhere outside the walls of the Test Cloud lab, and certainly not into the views of anybody who shouldn't be seeing it.
Thanks so much, Dan. And one last question I see here is, can the Test Cloud handle camera interactivity?
That's a really good question. So we've actually got a couple of customers where camera sensitivity is very important, and it's actually not just trying to inject data into the camera. It's more about they're testing things that involve a camera that's actually using light, right? To give you an idea of the actual nature of the Test Cloud, it's a bunch of devices. It's a huge number of devices sitting on a number of shelves in dark rooms, right? So you're not going to see a whole lot of light coming into the camera. However, we've made an arrangement where we have one of our rooms that has the lights on and the devices are propped up slightly so that they still can consume light. Now that's a very small edge case of potential camera use cases. The more common one is barcode scanning for field service types of applications or for retail. And for these types of use cases, we have actually developed a custom solution that enables you to inject at runtime an image into the camera UI. So the user goes through their normal flow of selecting an image or taking a photo, but at the end of that, instead of the photo that's taken, we inject a sample image. So for example, a barcode that has a known UPC, right? And then you can scan that, you can load it in, and then do whatever you want to do with it. So there's lots and lots of possibilities, and one of the major benefits of working with Xamarin is that we control the full stack from the automation all the way up through the cloud implementation, which means that if you have a custom feature request and your business is hinging on that particular feature request, it's something that we can work with you to get done.
Great, thank you. I think that's all we have in terms of questions for today. Just a reminder, we will be sending out a recording to everybody who did register and attend, so you'll get to see that as well, and it'll also be uploaded to our blog in the coming days. And just to remind you all that the follow-up from this session is you can either visit xamarin.com/testcloud or contact ryan.mckinley@xamarin.com.